Well, the newcomers were on full display in the spring game. Freshmen, transfers, we saw a lot of them. And a lot of them look pretty darn good. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day if you're watching on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch the show. We got my guy, Max Torres. He covers Oregon for Fan Nation at Sports Illustrated, host of the Ducks Dish podcast. He's got great stuff going on. Max, my man, how are we doing on this Thursday for us, Friday for all the normal people out there?
I'm good, man. You know, it's a fun time for Duck football right now. You know, spring football is over, but that means that recruiting's ramping up. So this is my time to shine, man. I can't wait. It's been great.
Yeah, ready to shine like Brucey in the longest yard. No, I'm kidding. Though Brucey did have a successful onside kick, so maybe that wasn't as much of a shot as I initially thought it might come off as. But incredible movie, The Longest Yard. But Oregon had a lot of newcomers on the field on Saturday in the spring game. I wanted to get your thoughts there. We kind of started a conversation over on your show, and I wanted to pick up on that front a bit and go in that direction. Also talk about recruiting, of course, later, and then a fun question to wrap up today's show. But of all the newcomers, you can pick a transfer, you can pick a true freshman, doesn't really matter. Who stood out to you the most that was new for Oregon? Because, you know, my number one guy on offense was Troy Franklin. But, like, we already know what we're going to get in Troy Franklin. He might take another step forward. But of the newcomers, transfers and freshmen, who stood out the most to you?
Yeah, so for me, I think maybe we can go one on each side of the ball. I think the first one on offense, at least, would probably have to be Tez Johnson. I think that's the easy answer, the basic pick. But how could you not say him? There have been so much hype all throughout spring ball, all throughout the offseason about him and his connection with Bo. And he just, kicked it into another gear, showed that he has a different gear. That's kind of what I've been talking about on my show and on my site about how people are telling me the whole spring, this guy just moves different. And that's exactly what he did in that spring game, juking a couple defenders out of their socks and then just blazing for 6. So I thought that he looked really good. He was an easy answer, I think, but still someone to get excited about for sure. Maybe an under-the-radar guy on offense, if we just want to stay on that side of the ball for a second. I'm going to go with Dante Dowdell, the freshman running back out of Picayune, Mississippi. The dude is a tank, 6'2", 215. He should still be in high school. Looks like he's been in college for like 3 years. I know Carlos Lachlan loves that guy. And, it's really just the rich get richer. And it's not even like Dante did anything super crazy. He did lead the entire game in rushing, but he only had like 30-some-odd yards. But the way he hit the hole and the way he just dragged defenders, I think he's definitely going to have like some of that Bucky Irving in him where it's almost impossible for just one guy to bring him down.
But I think there's a difference in their running styles. They're very distinct. Dowdell is... He looked kind of like CJ Verdell, but stronger and faster, where he's a downhill kind of one cut back. But when he gets going forward, he is just tough to bring down. Bucky Irving is tough to bring down because he's just shifty. He will shift, shake, dance, zig, zag, and all that sort of stuff to get away from defenders in the hole. So I like those picks. I definitely do. I think Tez Johnson was such a fascinating storyline going into the game and is coming out of it as well, because there's still an idea out there that Gary Bryant Jr. could be added to the roster. And you just kind of look at where you would fit in. And you're like, I guess, like, okay, I like having talented guys, but also I feel like we have a lot of talented guys. And speaking of wide receivers, I wanted to highlight this. Someone sent this to me via Twitter DM. You know who you are. I apologize. I forgot to put it in my rundown for today's show, but I mentioned earlier this week that Kyler Casper, I thought, looked pretty good. If you just like watched what he was doing, he wasn't always getting the ball thrown his way. He did have a really great catch on the sideline, though, that looked exactly like the sort of player that could be a number one X receiver or a number one Z receiver. When I think he was I think they were running like a switch wheel on the far side of the field, and he was open, but the ball was a little behind, and he turned around, made the catch behind his shoulder with two hands, and got a foot down in bounds. He also had a contested ball that ended up being out of bounds down the sideline from Ty Thompson. And I watched his other routes and whatnot, and I feel like he was really explosive and a guy who could very easily be Oregon's number 2X receiver this year. He was that caliber of recruit coming out of high school. I liked what I saw from Kyler Casper, and that's why I'm kind of iffy on, do we need to add Gary Bryant Jr. or Zachary Franklin from UTSA? Like, yeah, you could, but the mindset there is, well, you want to add a transfer over a high school kid because he's more proven. Well, high school kids or recruits can't prove it until they actually see the field. And I think Casper's got a lot of talent. And if you give him a chance to see the field, I feel like he can do well. What do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. I mean, the guy was uber gifted coming out of high school. And, he did reclassify to get to Oregon really, really early. So I think that might be part of the reason why we didn't see him break through as a true freshman. It's just, that's not an easy move to make for anybody. But now he's got his first true full off season in college, getting to be in the weight room, getting to be with Junior Adams and those other talented wide receivers. I bet that Troy Franklin's kind of helped take him under his wing. And then adding Trayshawn Franklin. I'm getting all my names mixed up.
That would be a heck of an athlete, man. Trayshawn Franklin. Holy smokes. 6'3", 220 with that speed. Oh, boy.
The reason that Trayshawn Holden, like, he could also help him because they're a little bit more similar body type. But yeah, I think that he is definitely someone to keep an eye on this year and probably somebody that kind of gets lost in the mix when you're just talking about kind of the projected starters. Don't forget about that 6'6", 205 pound guy out of Arizona. He's been doing his thing for a while and he's kind of looking for an opportunity. But to your point about Franklin, of the Zachary variety out of UTSA, I mean, I don't think that he has like posted an official Oregon offer or anything, but I just think that in the era of transfer portal and, players following coaches,
yeah,
I don't think we can write it off because he had back-to-back 1,000+ yard seasons at UTSA, caught 94 passes last year. If he wants to come to Oregon, I don't see why you would turn him away. But it is kind of interesting to obviously evaluate given Oregon's scholarship situation. They're going after that Louisiana Lafayette corner Trey Amos, who entered the portal and then like picked up 20 offers instantly, something like that. He's blowing up. So it's going to be interesting to kind of monitor how they use their scholarships, especially with Gary Bryant set to announce his commitment next Saturday. And I think I'm probably going to try to go to that one because I think the ceremony's out here in SoCal.
Yeah, I could see the logic in, adding Franklin for sure. Zachary Franklin, that is. We've already got Troy. But, to me, it just doesn't feel like it's a need. Like, I don't look at Oregon's wide receiver room and think that we need another body. You could have one. You see how one could slot in, maybe, be useful if a couple guys get injured. You'd like to have some depth and talent and production there. We saw that last year. Chase Cota goes down. Dante Thornton slides in, and you don't have a production drop-off. And Thornton had some really big games. Max is going to share who stood out to him on the defensive side of the ball as well amongst the newcomers because we've got quite a few of them. But first, I'm going to tell you all about why you need to go get Built Bars. Yeah, we've been talking about them all week. All you everydayers out there know that, but I remain adamant that they are fantastic. They're a delicious snack, but without all the sugar and calories. They're the best tasting protein bar ever. They're healthy, they taste amazing, and they've got a bunch of great flavors covering 100% real dark chocolate. Flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, mint brownie. The list goes on and on. They're all covered in that delicious, yummy chocolate. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, a whopping 17 grams of protein. You can now get yours at one of 3 destinations. Go to your local Walmart, head over to the pharmacy section, get a box of 4 of cookies and cream, or go to Sam's Club, get a 13-bar variety box, or you can get specialty flavors at Built.com. Sam's Club, Walmart, Built.com, always to get your next order of Built Bars. Go check them out and all the great flavors, and you can thank me later. All right, Max, let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Who stood out amongst the newcomers, right? You know, there were a lot of players who I think looked good in one way or another, but amongst the guys who were new, who kind of popped the most to you on the defensive side of the ball?
Man, where do you start here? I think that the Oregon defense kind of stole the spring game. You know, it was a slow start. I know Ty Thompson was slow out of the gate, and part of that was because the defenses were just playing well. But there's a lot of a lot of directions we can go. But I'm gonna stick with the high school guys. Mateo Uiagalelei would definitely be a big one that stands out. He was kind of all over the place, looked really comfortable. But the guy I'm gonna go with is Cole Martin. I am super fired up about Cole Martin, just to get to see that explosiveness in his game. The guy isn't that big of a defensive back, which is maybe why he could have gotten written off a little bit, you know, just on the grand scheme of things in this amazing recruiting class for Oregon. You know, probably closer to 5'9" than 5'10", but the guy moves. He plays like he's shot out of a cannon. He's twitchy. He's really agile, has that amazing short area burst, and he's physical, in your face kind of a DB. Had a couple of good breakups on Saturday during that spring game. And then he also had a pretty electric punt return that went for about 30 yards. You know, special teams plays can be a little bit hard to evaluate in a spring game. You know, don't want to get guys banged up, but I think that dude could really just be a guy that mixes things up in this cornerback room. I know that's a competition that you and I have been talking about extensively this offseason. And I think that Cole Martin could definitely find himself playing a key role in what this defense does as far as attacking, replacing Christian Gonzalez. You know, you bring in Kyrie Jackson and then I think 5 corners from the high school ranks, and Cole Martin didn't waste any time getting to Eugene. You know, he had the Adidas All-American Bowl in San Antonio, got to meet him there. Great young man. He was hurt, so he didn't play, but then he got on a flight and went out to Eugene, and now he's clearly there doing his thing.
Yeah, I thought he was mighty impressive. And by the way, was recording those pass breakups or great coverage moments against Chris Hudson, who is going into his 3rd year starting in Oregon's offense. I think he played a little bit the prior year, but regardless, like he's been a really good. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He has looked the part since playing for the Ducks. That's who Cole Martin was already prepared to go one-on-one against as a true freshman. I'm with you that he was really impressive. An interesting thing, and I'm curious as to your thoughts here, Max. I feel like Cole Martin looked the way we all kind of expect Roderick Pleasant to look. Smaller corner, but lightning quick. And that's kind of the scouting report on him. And I think having those sorts of guys, like, yeah, you need some big body corners. But as I look to the future in the secondary, you know, Kyrie Jackson, I think, has 2 years of eligibility left. We'll see if he ends up coming back after this season. Jalil Florence still expected to be in the rotation. I absolutely love Jalil Florence's upside there. As you kind of go down the list, I feel like Martin and Pleasant coming in the same recruiting class could very well be kind of joined at the hip as your nickel corners, or maybe a starting corner going forward if you're okay playing, you know, one guy a bit smaller on the outside.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make, and honestly something I've been thinking about a little bit too since the game ended, just how they do have similarities in their game and their frames are pretty similar. The only difference right now is that Cole Martin's at Oregon and Roderick Pleasant's trying to set more California State records and you know, be one of the first guys, I think, to go sub 10 in the 100. So obviously, you know, nothing wrong with that. You know, we knew that track was super important to Roderick, and he's trying to, you know, finish his high school career the way he wants to, which I think is definitely admirable in today's age of college football, where there's honestly a lot of pressure, Spencer, for guys to get to Oregon, you know, right away. I was talking to somebody at Modern Day the other day and just kind of talking about the recruiting process and, you know, what it's like. You only get college once. And he was like, well, if you don't get there early, you're not starting. Or, you know, you're not really playing that much as a true freshman. So just kind of another interesting element with it all. But I do think that that's kind of an advantage that this Oregon staff has, is maybe you kind of look back on how Cole kind of adjusted to the college level and, you know, what his acclimation was like and how his skill set fit in the defense. And then maybe you see some of that carryover with Roderick, and that could be kind of a hidden benefit to Roderick getting here late. But Cole already being there, maybe it kind of helps this defensive staff just kind of have him hit the ground running and maybe make an impact in 23.
One thing on the defensive line newcomers that I wanted to ask you about is I'm with you that Mateo was an impact newcomer. And I mean, he looked fast. He looked explosive. He looks ready. I mean, to me, he looks completely ready. I don't know if he starts over Mace Funa, who's got a lot of experience. I don't know if he starts over Jordan Birch, who's got college experience and also I thought had some good moments. But to me, Mateo looked far more impressive, at least from kind of like an eye pop standpoint than Jordan Birch did. I thought Birch had some solid moments, but to me, like my overall takeaway was, boy, looks like Mateo is the real deal. And Birch, looked good, but I thought Mateo was more impressive in that game at least.
Sure. No, I mean, and I think that's fair, but it's also important to note, we can only take so much from a spring game. Birch didn't come to Oregon to sit on the bench. So, he's obviously going to be in the mix. I would assume that Mace Funa is going to start as well. But I don't know. I think not in a way entirely dissimilar from the running back room. I wonder if once the entirety of the 23 class gets here and everyone's up and running, I think this Oregon staff might be able to have some fun, when they put games away. Or just think about this, Spencer, like, you have a team on the ropes, they can't do a whole lot. And then say Birch or Funa needs a break. You're like, hey, Mateo, go in there. And then there's no drop off. I'm not saying that's the case, but I think that's part of the vision that Lanning and Lapoy have of just, oh, hey, that guy's out. Let's just bring in another dog. Like that's the vision that you want to, build towards. That's what these premier teams, premier programs have. That's what Georgia has. That's what Ohio State has. That's what Bama has. Like, that's what you want to build towards. And then again, I think we talked about this a little bit when we were talking some spring recruiting for the spring game. You can see that vision playing out in their plan. Look at the caliber of defensive linemen that were on campus this past weekend. And that just shows you again that is the vision that these guys are building towards. I think the defensive line is finally catching up to the offensive line, and it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think Birch and Mateo are a pretty significant upgrade in terms of who your top edge defenders are with Mace Funa in there compared to, who was in those spots last year, probably DJ Johnson, who had moments where he was good for sure, but the consistency, felt like he disappeared on the field at times for the Ducks. And, Braden Swinson was in there and Trevin Ma'ai played some at edge. I think when you go from that group to this year's group, I think it's a pretty sizable jump. It's almost as if we discussed the rundown for today's show, because you have now created a perfect segue into our mailbag question of the day. For all you Duck fans listening or watching out there, you can always be a part of the mailbag. YouTube comments, or hit me up on Twitter at smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. Those be the handles. This question came in from Richard. Do you see us landing more 5 stars if we win the Pac-12 and or get into the college football playoff? I think generally speaking, the answer is yes, it does help recruiting, but it's kind of a chicken or the egg question. It's like, do you win and then you can get more high-level recruits, or do you get more high-level recruits and then you can win at that higher level? I do think if you win a conference championship, it can help, but I think fundamentally, Max, it's far more dependent upon the staff and the priorities they have, the connections they have, their talents as recruiters. I do think that for Oregon at this point in time, because we've already been to the college football playoff, won Rose Bowls, won conference championships, I think the brand is enough to where they can go after, like we talked about the big visitor list that you alluded to, they can already go after a bunch of 5-star players and try to land multiple in a given recruiting cycle and have a bunch of blue chippers on there and be in that coveted ratio of at least 60%, blue chippers or whatever, 55%, whatever that golden ratio is for teams that can contend to win a national championship. I think it can help, but I don't think it's, a necessity where you would suddenly see Oregon recruiting explode and take off like it never has before if Oregon goes out and wins the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, all those accolades and, achievements that you referenced, college football playoff appearance, Rose Bowl championships, Pac-12 championships, those are all great. But I don't think, unless we're talking about a national championship, I don't think that they carry they carry weight. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. I don't think it's going to sway a recruit like, oh, Oregon won the Pac-12 last year, or they went to the playoff. So especially now that it's, expanding, it's going to make it carry less value if more teams can go in just naturally. But the point here, Spencer, is that Oregon has that brand. And I was talking about this the other day with somebody. I think after talking to more people on this staff, I'm a lot more connected to this Lanning staff than the Cristobal staff, which, I'm very happy about. I think I'm ready to say that this staff at Oregon is going to be, if they're not already, better recruiters than what we saw from Cristobal at Oregon. Just after, covering the team really closely with that. And I'm not saying that the Cristobal staff was bad by any means. I mean, they brought the highest rated class in program history, but I do feel like we're seeing all these departures from the 21 class, it does kind of maybe the class takes a little bit of a ding just because not as many guys panned out, right? And it was COVID, that year before, so it's kind of hard to evaluate guys. But this Lanning staff is operating at a different level, and I can't emphasize that enough. He's just so organized. There's no, I before meet, there's some adage, they're all in it together. That's what I'm trying to say. And no one's like,
I was about to say I before E except after C.
No, yeah, I almost caught myself doing that too.
Which is a crap rule, by the way, because it's only applicable 70% of the time. I remember learning that, and then as the years went on, it was like, wait, so that's EI, that's EI, that's EI. Why do we have this? This isn't a rule. This is just a guessing game.
So yeah, no, I don't know how we got into that. Maybe it's because it's kind of early in the morning and I'm not all there yet.
It's completely my fault. I'm amazed so many people will put up with me here on the show and all my shenanigans.
No, you're chilling.
Continue.
You're chilling. But no, seriously, I mean, that sounds pretty bold to say that this Lanning staff, I think, is going to go down as being better recruiters than the Cristobal staff. But I remember texting somebody, and I told you this on a show a long time ago on signing day, texting one of my sources at Oregon, and they were saying this 24 class is going to go down as the best in history. At least that's the goal right now. And the caliber of the talent that's coming in, we got 5-star updates, right? We got Brandon Baker out of Modern Day, and I talked to him the other day. He's got everybody in the country coming after him, but he came out for the spring game, and I think Oregon put themselves in an awesome spot there. You got Jordan Ross, a 5-star edge rusher from Alabama that came out, and I think Oregon leads for him now. And maybe that's something that is hard for people to believe, seeing that he's in Alabama and in the South, but I think that Oregon leads there, if not is a serious contender for him. So I think it's not so much about the playoff and the Pac-12 title game. It's about who you have on your staff. And if you have a brand to market, to boot, like to add on to that, it's funny because there's like already such a high floor just for anyone being at Oregon. You talk, hey, I'm from Oregon and I want to recruit you. That's going to catch some eyeballs right away. So I think that they're on a trajectory to get more 5-stars. And I just think that it's a natural product of the foundation that has been put in place. Lanning saw what Cristobal did, and he's looking back like, oh yeah, I remember like at Bama we did this, at Georgia we did this. And he's just applying that to Oregon. And I'm hearing recruits say that, like he's already done so much amazing stuff at Georgia. And I think he just wants to do the same thing at Oregon and make it even more special.
He's not exactly what I was as a hitter in my youth baseball career, which is just try and get it over the second baseman's head into right field for a base hit. He's swinging for the fences here is what you're saying, which, by the way, I'm completely on board with. Like, you got to do it. If you did, like, our ultimate goal is win a national championship, right? Clearly, like this is what it takes. You got to be able to recruit at that level to go up against these big time SEC schools. So I love hearing that, and I'm fascinated to see how that all plays out. Let's end with a fun mailbag question that came in the other day from Tanya Shipley, who's asked a couple good ones over the last couple weeks. Another question. For some, the marquee moment that they think of when they think Oregon Ducks is the pick by Kenny Wheaton. What is your personal marquee moment? Now, I will start. No, I'll let Max.
I was gonna say you should start because I'm
okay. I'll start. So I wasn't alive for the pick. I am a younger fellow, as those of you on YouTube can definitely see. I'm older than I look, but still relatively young-ish. So I wasn't alive for the pick. That's the most iconic moment in Oregon football history, I think if you go back to, my lifetime as an Oregon football fan, there are a lot of different moments. I've got two. I've got three. I've got three that stand out in my head. I really don't know how to differentiate these. Like, two are probably above one, but I love the other one so much. So first one, LaMichael's punctuation touchdown against Stanford, 2010, in the undefeated regular season, went to the national championship game, which Jerry Allen so appropriately adjudicated on the airwaves as statement, because we were down 21-3. All hope was looking lost. We came back, won the game like 51-30 or whatever it was, something like that. So that's definitely one of them en route to the national championship. That same season, and this is the one that's probably below, but just kind of like for me embodied everything that made that era of Oregon football so special. At USC in the Coliseum in the whiteout jerseys, Storm LA.
Stormtrooper.
Yeah, I love those. I absolutely love those outfits. No, that was 2012. Kenyon running crazy was 2012. But in 2010, there was a moment on the broadcast where, and Chip Kelly was just this big hot name. He was the big hot name in college football because he was going fast. He wasn't huddling. He was just all about speed. That's what it was. And we were, like the coolest team in the country. And Kirk Herbstreit on that USC game said, there's no way with 32 seconds inside his own 5, Chip Kelly's going to try and score again, does he? Like, there's no way he has the audacity to try and score again, does he? And then we go play action 4 verticals and we get like out to midfield. Darren Thomas ended up fumbling to end the half and we didn't get it. But he and Brent Musburger were just beside themselves. And that moment, I think, just encapsulates what made it so much fun is Chip just came in and pushed the envelope, right? So those 2 moments from that season are definitely in there. And, as a play-by-play broadcaster, like I just have a special affinity for that one because those guys are just being so authentic in that moment. Like, there's no way they're going to do this, right? And then they are just losing it. Kirk's voice cracks. They're like, oh my gosh, every other coach in America, conventional wisdom would have said, take a knee, go to the half with a lead. And Chip was like, nope, we're going to try and score again. We're going 4 verticals. So I love those two. But then the other one, Rose Bowl 2015, I was there in person against Florida State. Jameis Winston loses the ball. Tony Washington streaking the other way. I think those are the 3 moments that are probably the most identifiable for me. I think the Winston one is probably the one that people outside of Oregon know the best, but those are the moments that popped into my head. A lot of different ones you could go to. But to me, given the grand stage that Oregon's seasons were taking place on in those years, those are the ones that stood out for me. What do you think, Max?
Man. Yeah, those are some really good ones for sure. I think for LaMichael's punctuating run in 2010, I think you said it was, I think I remember that I was sick from school that day and I was sitting on my grandparents' couch or my grandpa's rocking chair watching that one. So that was pretty legendary. And then, I was at the Rose Bowl too. That was super cool. Wasn't the biggest fan of those uniforms. I think I'm on the outside.
Really? You are in the minority. I love
bright
those.
For me. I didn't really like it, but they kicked some butt in those uniforms. So that's cool. So I'm going to try to go narrow down a couple. I think one of the earlier ones that I have, like kind of iconic moments, but it was more so a big game, was 2013 against Washington State. It was an absolute blowout of a game when Marcus Mariota was still there, but they had the pink uniforms, the pink helmets. He did really well. Byron Marshall had himself a game. He's from San Jose, so I always get excited hearing about that. But that was an awesome game. Really good seats for that one. And my sister I think that was my sister's freshman year at Oregon.
I love the pink helmets.
So that was kind of cool to be able to experience that with her and the whole fam. And then, oh shoot, I can't remember the year. It might have been 2017. I think the triple overtime game against Arizona State with Vernon Adams and
2015. Yes.
2015.
Oh.
Okay, shoot, I got my years messed up. But I was watching that one at home, and I remember I was in high school. I was in high school super late, and I was like, I don't care what's happening. I have to finish watching this game. Yep. And it was just like punch after punch, and I'm like, what is happening? and then I'm pretty sure I was like screaming around my house when they confirmed that touchdown. And then Dwayne Stanford had that insane grab over the middle in the end zone where he collided.
Yeah, on fourth down, Vernon Adams, the desperation he crashes into his own guy. I think it was Evan Bayless.
Yeah, it was a tight end.
Yeah, that he went barreling into. That's a good one.
That one was nuts.
I love that game.
And then the last one I'm going to say, I think, is was it 20? It might have been 2014. Oregon against Washington at home in Eugene. That's when they had the pick uniforms,
so good,
and just beat the heck out of Washington. It was 45-20, I think. And there was never really a doubt. I think that year was obviously a very special year. Every game that they went into, it was just like, all right, like when are they gonna put this one like way out of reach? And they had that really good defensive line with Defoe and Armstead, which I feel like we're seeing more of those guys coming to Eugene on a regular basis. Those types of guys. I think that this year's D-line has the potential to be on that level, if not higher. So that was an awesome game, rivalry game. Autzen was electric. So you can't just pick one. We both went with 3, but I think it was it was a lot of good ones.
It's very hard to choose one, but I loved that question to end the week of shows on a Friday. Max Torres is the host of the Ducks Dish podcast. He covers Oregon for Fan Nation at Sports Illustrated. We love having him on the show. As always, Max, my man, so good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you having me on, Spencer. Always fun to talk some Ducks. Send me some mailbag questions. I put out some feelers on Twitter. I don't always get the most responses, but I want to do more mailbag stuff like you do on your show, Spencer. So just wanted to put that in there, but appreciate you having me on, man. It was great as always.
Man. Anytime. Go give the man some love. He's at mtorres sports on Twitter. Until Monday, when I'll be back in your feeds, whether you listen to or watch the show. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.